Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick hurling podcast with your host Mark Kennedy, joined again this week by Kieran Collins, and also we're joined by a very special guest, Seoirse Bulfin. Lads, how are things?
Good, Mark.
Mark, how's it going, Kieran?
Good
to be on board.
Lovely. Great to have you on board. Apologies for the tech gremlins last week, Seoirse, but we're all in the house anyway. Rory is off tonight. I suppose, guys, we'll kind of focus in on Munster, Leinster, Joe McDonagh Cup fixtures from last weekend. Look at this weekend's fixtures in Munster and Leinster. I suppose, Seoirse, we'll start off with yourself. How are things going this year for you?
It's good. Doing a bit at the moment, obviously, with Charles in Cork there. So that's kind of keeping me busy at the moment. Obviously, things didn't kind of work out for me in Meath with relation to kind of a couple of personal things and stuff that I just couldn't commit for the remainder of the year. So, as I said, I'm back around now a bit more local and stuff, so the travelling isn't as much as it was.
I suppose, Seoirse, we'll get your kind of thoughts probably first off on the Munster Senior Hurling Championship. How do you think it's gone so far?
The Munster Senior Hurling Championship is I saw it in the scribes over this during the week, is the jewel in the GA crown, definitely from the point of view of, I suppose, the gate receipts and things. It's the gift that keeps on giving. So look, Munster Championship is a uniquely special competition, and I don't think it ever ceases to disappoint us. And again, last weekend, I thought it was a fantastic game below in Walsh Park, and it's after blowing the whole thing wide open again. Now a draw, I suppose, is after adding extra spice, if extra spice was needed for Limerick and Cork on Saturday, because it's after, I suppose, technically I was talking to someone on Monday morning, they were saying that mathematically, 3 points this year could get you through with the way things are shaping up. Now it will be a long shot, but it certainly gives everyone a chance again this weekend going into it. So not that Cork needed extra sort of incentive, but it means that a win against Limerick would truly throw the doors wide open for everyone again this weekend. So look, I said Munster Championship for me is probably, I'll be biased as a Limerick man, and being born and bred on a diet of Munster Championship, it's probably for me one of the greatest competitions in the world in any sport. So never cease to disappoint. And again, this year's already thrown up a couple of great games, and I'm sure the same will happen over the next few weeks before we finally decide on the top 3 teams that could be going forward.
Yeah, absolutely, sure. And I suppose let's kind of get to the Walsh Park then last Saturday night. I mean, absolute classic game here. 52 scores from 24 players. Seoirse, I mean, 321 to 127 really tells the tale of the tape, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was just a phenomenal game from start to finish. The second half in particular, just as often happens with these games, it took on life of its own, and it was just in stuff. There were some fantastic scores, loads of talking points, including referees running across penalty takers and goalkeepers and the like. So it definitely had everything. I suppose, depending how you look at it, and I suppose in all these things, you'd like to think that results and maybe decisions balance itself out, and maybe over the course of the hour, a draw might have been a fair result. I'm sure Waterford would be very, very disappointed any day or 4 points up in injury time. You'd like to close out the game. And I know I saw in Davies' post-match interview, he mentioned maybe a little bit naively they didn't maybe foul a little bit further out the field when the move for Sean Kennedy's goal was sort of starting. And had they got their chance back again, I'm sure there would have been a foul further out the field. But look, that's the cut and thrust of hurling, and it's all split-second stuff. It's very easy to say that afterwards, but ultimately, again, 4 points down going into injury time, I'm sure Liam Cahill would have taken your hand off at that stage for a draw. So it means that every game is more mouth-watering again for the next couple of weeks.
I suppose it was a classic Munster, championship game. I suppose plenty of talk after the game for the wrong reasons. I suppose, as Seoirse mentioned there, with James Owens and the penalty saga, probably a couple of decisions there too that were questionable. But overall, like a great game, and it just shows you can never have enough of a lead in hurling. Like you're in injury time and you're 4 points up. You're. I think that probably was a factor for Waterford. I think they thought themselves they had the job done at that stage. Potentially probably a soft late free, but I think as Seoirse said, like the books were balanced. I think obviously Tip could have a lot of grievances early on in that game, but definitely the draw was a fair result. And I suppose Tipperary come into the game under severe pressure after that that big loss to Limerick the first day out for them. Waterford obviously on a bit of a high after the win against Cork, and is 3 points enough for Waterford with 2 tough away games coming? I suppose time will tell, but for Tipperary, that point could be huge for them come the end of the year. 2 home games, and I suppose look, it's all to play for. And I suppose we mentioned at the start of the championship campaign, like to probably be easier, pick a lot of numbers and try and pick the three out of Munster, and you try and write off some teams, but like they're all still in the mix. Like we're heading into week 4, and all teams are in the mix, and one result here or there can change it so much, as we've seen in Leinster as well over the last few weekends. So I think the round robin the GA have been a lot of changes in the last couple of years, but a lot of them are negative. But I think this round robin is definitely a positive, and for teams involved, and if they're still involved at this point, like I suppose it adds an extra level of suspense to the whole competition, I think.
Sure, we'll get you in there. I mean, from a Water perspective, Davy fits better than anyone. I mean, an awful lot of positives coming out of this game. I mean, like Callum Lyons and wing backs scoring the 3 points, Desi Hutchinson chipping in with 6 points, Bennett 2-3. I mean, some of the scores, some of the goal setups I thought were very impressive for Waterford. I mean, they're going to be very much a live threat here for the remainder of the championship.
Without a doubt, and as Kieran said there, like it was going to be very difficult to pick your 3 teams before the start of the competition, and here we are halfway through it. It's going to be more difficult now to pick the 3 teams, and that says an awful lot about the level of, I suppose, competitiveness within the competition and how close the whole thing is. As I said, it's easier to predict. A lot of numbers I was even thinking coming down the road from training, what odds would you get at this stage, and maybe Limerick not qualifying? No, I think they will, but strange things have happened in this competition, so that's why I think a win for Cork Saturday night would blow the thing wide open completely. But again, getting back to last Saturday, I think Desi Hutchinson and Stephen Bennett have been on fire the first couple of games. And, Desi, a lot of talk, maybe last week playing a bit far from goal, but he's one of the top forwards in the country, and he's causing havoc inside at the moment. And on top of that, I think Stephen Bennett has obviously gone very well, but having Shane back, I mean, I believe Shane was going very, very well up until, I think, was it 2 weeks before the first round against Cork, and he got injured, so he's back in the mix now again. So he's a huge addition going forward. Now, obviously, Conor Prunty could be a bit of a loss. I'd say he's doubtful for the next, and out he is a huge loss when they are travelling to Innis Sunday week if he is out. But again, like I think going forward, goals and the ability to get goals is hugely beneficial, and they've done that very, very well the last couple of games, particularly last week. And as you said, their movement and even the quick thinking for the free and things like that was really, really sharp, and they're very, very dangerous. And Waterford was traditionally have always that ability of maybe playing off the cuff and doing something that's maybe not expected, and they have that sort of X factor at times, maybe that certainly has been seen the last couple of games. So it's an addition. It's huge for the competition when you have 5 teams that can beat each other on any given day, and that's the beauty of this competition,
But I just want to make a point in that, Mark. Like the Waterford team we're seeing it's not a new team. Like it's a team from 1920 and with a few additions in, and one of them additions I think, and he's a huge player from in the forward line, is Mikey Kiley. He's such a target man inside. He's winning some amount of ball, and between himself and getting tied to Burker back in the field as well. It's huge for them. And we've said it over the weeks, like you nail down your spine of the team, you get your 3 and your 6 sorted, and you build around it. Prunty will be a loss if he is out again when they're playing Clare or even Limerick later down the line again. Tied to Burker to come back in after another serious injury. He's playing really, really well, and they're a team now that probably starting into it, probably confidence wasn't there, but I'm sure game on game, that obviously Tipperary game would be a little bit of I'm sure that felt like a loss after the game in the dressing room, 4 points up, but it's still a confidence builder. Like they've put 2 results back to back in a championship year. It's something they haven't done since the round robin started. So like the only way is up for them, really. And
Kieran hit the nail on the head there. I mean, in this day and age, the ability to win your own ball and win primary possession is hugely beneficial in hurling the way it's gone. And Mikey Kiley, like one of the last scores there, did he win a free or did he score from it? It was a long puck out from Sean O'Brien, and it was an awesome catch looking into the sun, so he has that ability. And looking at him the last couple of years with Joel, he always promised that, but he is a huge addition, so that's a huge plus for Waterford as well. So it's very hard to call what way it's going to go for the next couple of weeks.
Kieran, can we just go back to Tipperary? You mentioned at the start of this podcast in terms of the pressure was firmly on Liam Cahill, management and players heading down to Walsh Park. Tip made 3 changes: Cahill Barrett, Noel McGrath and Darragh Stakelin making his debut. Thought all 3 had decent cameos, very good cameos. But I suppose, look, the leadership we called for last weekend was there in abundance, and you had likes of Valentine and the Mark Hughes, they really came to the party late.
Today, I was really impressed with Mark Hughes, scoring 4 points from play. I suppose to me, the two players that have serious potential, and we've seen Gerard O'Connor with one of them. Like he was, he had 3 Man of the Match awards in the space of a week earlier on in the league campaign and between the league and Fitzgibbon. The likes of him and Jason Ford, I think he'd step it up a little bit more. Jason Ford is probably, not going through the best vein of form at the minute, but for Tipperary to have any chance to be one of the 3, they need all their 6 forwards firing. Look at a huge plus for Tipperary getting Carl Barrett back in the field, and I think he showed that. He's such a leader for the back, and he's such a tenacious and tough defender. You'd like him on your team any day. But I think just look, we've been saying it for a few weeks. Consistency among all the players, like Jake Morris. He had 3 points, but he needs to do this every day. Jason Ford needs to start contributing a little bit more. Noel McGrath, I thought was very good when he was on. I thought he probably should have stayed on a little bit longer, even because he was really having an influence on the game. There is a mix of the old and younger guys, and I think Cahill is kind of using it well. But I do think there's certain players they need to get more out of.
Yeah, sure. Should get you in there. I suppose get your thoughts in terms of Tipperary.
Yeah,
performance.
No, I suppose the one man, and I'd never singling anyone out. And I wouldn't even say it's for criticism, but I suppose I expected a bit more of. I thought Gerard O'Connor was phenomenal, as you said, in the Fitzgibbon and in the league, and he looked like he was going to be one of these guys who was going to take the championship by storm, and he probably just maybe hasn't reached those highs yet. Now, look, he's still relatively young and inexperienced at this level, and I think he's huge potential. And I think for the other teams, if himself and if Jason Ford can we know he's proven at this level, so if he can get that bit of form back, and Gerard O'Connor can find the form in the league, and even you look at someone like Conor Bowe, who looked like last year he was going to really. He had a super second half against Limerick last year in Thurles, and I thought he was going to maybe kick on a little bit more. But these guys, some of these guys who were mentioned, are still finding their feet at this level. And once they do find their feet, and once they can put up a couple of performances back to back, I think there'll be a huge benefit to Tipperary. And even if you look at Waterford, they're now 3 games. If you like, last year and this year, they're 3 games unbeaten in Munster Championship, which is kind of unheard of in since the new format for them. And the one thing they did say right throughout the league was judge themselves in Championship. And to be fair, so far, they've a win and a draw now. As Kieran said, albeit last Saturday might have felt a bit like a loss, but ultimately probably would have needed at least one more result anyway in the next 2 games, even had they held on for the win the last day. So I think Waterford are showing a certain level of consistency in Championship if you go back to last year's last game and the 2 games this year. And if Tipperary can find that with a couple of more guys, because again, Noel McGrath, well established, obviously staged the twilight of his career, huge plus last Saturday with him, and even being able to bring on the Bonner, another guy who will give you his all, and great, very selfless sort of a guy. He'll throw the ball around. He always seems to take the right option when he's on the ball. So if a couple of these younger lads can step up and just click and hold for a little bit longer in games, or maybe put a couple of games together, I think they will be a force to be reckoned with as well,
And I think Alan Tynan as well, I think we mentioned it as well at the start of the podcast here. When he switched to that midfield area, I thought he was a different player, really. Himself and Owen Conley as well, I thought played extremely well, and maybe Tip have stepped upon their midfield partnership for the rest of the Championship. I suppose, guys, we can go to this weekend coming trip of Limerick to Cork, Super Value Páirc Uí Chaoimh, Seoirse. I suppose, as you say, cat among the pigeons now, Cork must win territory here. It's going to be a fantastic game on Saturday night.
Look, it's the weather forecast is good. It's a sellout. Tickets are hard enough to come by again, which is phenomenal. And regardless what some counties say about travelling to Cork and the hassle it is when you're down there, when you're in the stadium, it's a phenomenal venue for a Munster Championship game. And a Saturday night game with the weather, the way it's going to be, it should be an absolute epic. Cork fighting for their lives. Limerick, I suppose, know that a win will probably even put them in the final with a game to spare, unlike last year. So they will certainly won't be holding back, And as I said, look, Cork, this is it now for Cork. It's do or die for Cork. They really need to get a win. So I think there's a fantastic game in store the weekend, and I think looking at the Cork team that was announced there, I saw it earlier today. It's quite even and balanced, and look, I think this will be a very, very tight affair. I think it'll go down to the wire. Home advantage is definitely worth a few points in every one of these games. Whether they quite have enough to get over the line against Limerick remains to be seen, but I certainly wouldn't bet against either team at the weekend. It's just too close to call for my money.
Kieran, get you in there. It's tantalisingly poised fixture here. Cork must win territory, as I said here. And I mean, I've been very impressed by their run game. I mean, they've scored heavy here in their first two outings here. And I mean, that's going to be a potent threat here for Limerick to counteract.
Yeah, was it 324 they scored against Clare? That'll win you, 90% of championship matches you play, that'll win you. That'll be enough of a score. I think Cork historically too, in recent years, there hasn't been much between Cork and Limerick when they've played. Even last year, there was only the minimum between them, so I think you can throw the form book out for this game this weekend. Cork are, as Seoirse says, fighting for their lives, and like if they don't come out to try and win this game, this is it. Like it's a final for them essentially. So like their hunger has to be at all, huge levels. I think even more than the Clare game last week. I think they'll be wary of Limerick, but I don't think they'll fear them either. I suppose they'll try and get. I suppose Limerick have showed signs, especially in the league, where they've leaked a couple of goals, and Cork are a team who go looking for goals. So I think that'll be one of their main targets this weekend. Is to, I think if they can get 3 goals against Limerick and put in a big performance like they did against Clare, like there won't be much in it. I do think Limerick, it would be a great start of their year. I suppose the championship year to have to have the safety secured with number one, but if you have your route to the Munster final secured with a game to go, because they won't want to, if they do lose this game, like it's a bigger game again next week against Waterford, because they're in their own fight as well, so and a farm team. So I think John Kiley would definitely like to get the win if he can out of the way, especially this weekend. And it's going to be a humdinger battle, but I think this was the word is that Kieran Joyce is missing. The one thing for me is I think Cork need to, especially I suppose their half back line, is to put more emphasis on defending than getting forward, because I think they're a very attacking minded team, and sometimes I think there's more of an impetus on the team to attack than defend, and Limerick will hurt them as well on the other side of the field. So I suppose that half back line will have their hands full, but it's going to be a great game. Weather conditions unbelievable, and there's no excuses.
Absolutely.
No, Kieran hit the nail on the head. I think everyone is aware of, I suppose, how dangerous they are going forward, but I suppose the game will probably be won or lost in their ability to try and curtail the Limerick forwards. And I think you probably saw it, Donald highlighted a couple of examples there last weekend about, I suppose, their, I won't say an inability, but they just didn't seem to track back. They're very attack minded, and if they don't kind of latch onto the runners coming through from the middle third with Limerick like they did against Clare, they will be in trouble. I don't know. I just think we're going to see something special from both teams on Saturday night, because again, Kieran is spot on. I think it's a huge carrot for John Kiley to be in a Munster final with a number of weeks to spare, and then you're almost looking at kind of quarterfinals, semi-finals towards the end of June. You're still hurling. It means things like injuries and being able to time your run a little bit better again. Well, listen, look, Limerick have been proven, and we'll deal with whatever's thrown at them. But when the big thing obviously for Limerick this year is to try for 5. It's never been done before. So I think the quicker they can get to the latter stages, the All-Ireland Championship, and get back up to the M7, I think the better it'll suit them. And the last thing they'll want is maybe Waterford coming to town in 2 weeks' time in a must-win game where any team that's playing Limerick these days, in a sense, it's sort of a free shot. While there is pressure on Cork at the weekend, it's still a relatively free shot against Limerick, because it was outside of the Cork camp. The expectations are that they might be give them a game, but that's kind of it. Whereas, as I said, I think from a Limerick point of view, they'll want to get through as quickly as possible without having to maybe go into that last game and make it a must-win game,
Sure, we'll ask you a question here in terms of Limerick. And I mean, our thoughts are with Peter Casey as well, that ankle injury that he sustained against Tipperary, horrific, and wish him well. I suppose his absence here, Seoirse, it's a big impact, Limerick, for Drive for 5.
It's a massive impact, because again, I even said to my wife, we were watching the last in the warm-up, and we were saying he looked awful sharp, and I was talking to a few lads since, and in the weeks leading up to the last couple of games, he was kind of coming back from injury and stuff again, and he was supposed to be on fire in training, and he was kind of unmarkable, and he looked like that the last day, so he's a huge loss. I suppose all great teams, the attitude is it's next man up, and that's all well and good, but you're still losing an absolutely class forward. So I suppose you're looking at who is going to come in then. It was not just slightly unusual. The last Seamus Flanagan started against Clare, didn't see any game time the last day. So there is good strength in depth with Limerick, but I think very few teams at the end of the day you'd rather have a lad of the quality of Peter Casey than to be looking for someone to replace him. So it's a huge impact, because if if one of your forwards aren't going well, who's going to replace them then? Because all of a sudden you're starting to eat into your real quality players. But look, leaving all that aside, hurling results, and the important thing is that Peter takes the time to recuperate and recover, because it was a horrific injury, and I suppose whatever happens, the important thing is that he's well and looked after, and if we really hope to see him back on the pitch at some stage in the future, if that's possible.
Absolutely. Here. I suppose, guys, can we get your verdicts for Super Value Park Keefe? Kieran, maybe we'll start with you first.
I don't think there's going to be much in it, but I still have to give it to Limerick. Like, they're All-Ireland champions. They're, I think they like Cork as well. They like Páirc Uí Chaoimh. They perform well there. It's a ground that's very similar to Croke Park. And for me, I think Cork's defending has been suspect, and not just this year, in years gone by as well. I think that'll be a huge part of the game, but I think Limerick will win, and I could probably see him winning by 3 or 4 points.
Sure, Chef, we'll get you in there. Who are you tipping?
I'm not taking a soft option, but that is basically the same as like Kieran said. I think it'll be tight. I think Cork will throw the kitchen sink at Limerick, but ultimately I think Limerick will have enough to come through. And as Kieran said, look, it's a fantastic venue, fantastic occasion. Limerick really, they thrive in these occasions. The pitch is unbelievable down there. So I think Cork will give them a good game, but I think Limerick will come through by 3 or 4 points in the end.
Yeah, I'm kind of hedging with you guys, but I'm fascinated with this full forward, full back line battle for both sides, and particularly the Cork, Connolly, Horgan axis here against the Dan Morrissey, Sean Finns, Barry Nash's. I mean, that could be worth the gate admission fee alone, really, on Saturday night. But one thing's for sure, I think, Seoirse, you've nailed it on the head here in terms of going to be fireworks on Saturday night. I suppose, guys, we can switch to Leinster Senior Hurling Championship last Saturday. Kieran, you were down in Chadwick's Park, Wexford. Wexford backs against the wall after the last tantrum in Corrigan Park, and my God, 128 to 23 points win over Galway. Superb performance for Wexford. And I suppose, what's been the general feeling down in Wexford after that result?
Gosh, the mood is very good, Mark, this week. Something I didn't know, but it was the first time they'd beaten Galway in championships since 1996. So it's a fair long spell. A lot of hurt after the Antrim game, and you suppose you could add in the Dublin game as well. I suppose if you're listening to the media, there's a narrative there that Wexford will fall over to the weaker teams and go and beat the bigger teams. But I think there was a lot of work put in last week. I think they just came out of the blocks, ready for this. I think the real marker was 10 seconds in, Liam McGovern. Okay, it gives away a free, but I think it's a real marker. I'm going to be in your face today. And same with Liam Ryan, maybe 2 or 3 minutes in, a bit of a scuffle breaks out in the middle of the field, but these are all markers, and to be fair, they got into Galway's face and they never got out of it the whole game. Look, really, I think it was just a really complete performance all over. There was no player you could single out who might have been, I think they won every battle on the field. In total honesty, I don't think there's any player that they got the better of, that didn't get the better of. Lee Chill is in the form of his life, scoring 11 points. Rory O'Connor, this is the real Rory O'Connor, scoring 1-6. The work he does, he's up and down that field. I suppose the late point, which it didn't really show well on the Sunday game highlights with the camera, but the Galway played a sharp puck out late in the game. Rory got a hook in on the 45, turned the ball over, turns and put it over the bar. That work rate, this was in probably the 68 minutes. To be still carrying on with that work rate at that late in the game, it was probably the epitome of the performance of the day. But really good performance. It gets them back in line. I suppose they would be very disappointed that they don't have at least 4 points on the board, maybe even 6 at this stage with the games they played. But I suppose it gets them back within a shot. They still need results. I think the easiest route for them, is just win the last 2 games. I suppose it guarantees safety, but they have to go to Nolan Park, which will be a tough test, as well. Carlow next week away. So a really good performance. But just touching on Galway, Jesus, Galway were just terrible. From the start, the puck outs is where you're building your platform in the game, and they were just very, very bad. They went short a lot of times. They didn't know what to do with it. They're a little bit predictable on their long puck outs. 50% of their puck outs go on Conor Cooney. So teams can defend it against this very easily. They just, I think Henry Shefflin, if you look at him on the sideline, I think his face told the whole story. This is 2 bad performances in a row. I know they eked out a draw last week against Kilkenny, but with the personnel Kilkenny were missing, Galway would have been expected to win that game at home. 23 points. I don't think they fired a shot here. An Ireland with 11 of the 23 points, 10 of them from frees, really disappointing. And I suppose Galway have, failed to flatter in this, championship so far. They probably will be strong enough to get through, but, I wouldn't be surprised to see, Galway to struggle to get into this top three, because just the performance levels, the way they've been, and they're just, they're really disappointing. I can't highlight that enough. They were really disappointing. And just a shell of the Galway teams you'd expect to see,
Sure. Look, I watched it on GA Go on Saturday evening. I was absolutely delighted for Keith and for the Wexford lads. I think the first thing that people are probably all over the country maybe underestimating a little bit is just how good Antrim are and the work that Darren Gleeson has done. They're a very, very good side. They're very well drilled by Darren. And I was up in Corrigan Park 3 years ago with Wexford when we drew them in the league. It's a very, very tough place to go and get a result. And look, I don't know what happened the week before with the game against Kilkenny. I was looking at their performance in the second round against Wexford. You could nearly say they almost, I won't say they wrote it off, but it looked like they were building maybe to try and win that home game. But I mean, if you go back to the league, they Dublin beaten both for goalkeeping error in the league. So the first thing I would say is Antrim aren't the sort of the pushovers that some people maybe think they are. But having said that, there'll be no one more disappointed than the Wexford lads and Keys with losing up there. But I wasn't a bit surprised with the performance the last day. I thought they were absolutely fantastic. As you said, Kieran, they set the tone from the word go. And there's a couple of key things for me. I mean, I think they have a great guy over from Keith Roster. He's Wexford through and through. And I suppose if you like, the team embodied the way Keith was as a player and how passionate he was, and I was just playing on the edge and just in your face, and that work rate and that hunger that they had was phenomenal. A couple of other things, I think having Mark Fanning back between the sticks is a huge fill-up for Wexford. I think he's one of the best goalkeepers around and has been for the last decade. And I know maybe last year and the year before there was one or two little errors, but for me, I mean, you have to have a really, really good solid goalkeeper. And, as I said, Mark is as good as what's out there. So I think he's a huge base to have. And then you look at the likes of Mogi, D. O'Keefe, and I think it was Mogi's 100th game last week, was it, for Wexford?
Wasn't it?
And then you throw in Chinny coming into his form. He's like, even Conor Mack, I thought, was a handful when they went long on the edge of the square. I think they have a really good mix now. They have a couple of really good, exciting younger lads coming through. And I think the other thing for the last couple of years is there's probably a slight transition maybe that people outside of Wexford aren't realising. Like the loss that the likes of Paul Morris and Sean Murphy and these lads are to the squad is huge. Just being around the squad as well as their overall attitude, just around the setup, just on the field as well, So there is a kind of that sort of, I suppose, transition coming. So that's why I think a bit of patience maybe is important with Wexford, because again, you still have Lee and these lads with a good few years left, and the likes of Matt O'Hanlon that are really kind of coming into their own now. And last Saturday proved that. I just thought they were really, really good. Again, maybe no different to Cork next Saturday. They knew, I suppose, their season was on the line. If they didn't get a win, they would have been under savage pressure. So that was fantastic. But again, I suppose from a Galway point of view, if you're a Galway fan, you'll be left scratching your head. I don't know, is it kind of one step forward and 10 steps backwards at this stage with them? You just don't know what you want to get with Galway. They seem, and I know you were there, Kieran, you said, so it mightn't be as obvious when you're watching telly, but to me, they look like there was kind of a zero game plan at times. Yeah. They weren't sure what they were doing. Then you come on and they threw Johnny Glynn in and they started lumping ball in. And again, the likes of Jippo, Liam Ryan letting slide full back, like they love that. Like they love that sort of a battle. So it's a sort of probably left Galway definitely with more questions than answers, I would say. As he said, I think they will have enough to eat through and probably just scrape through. Might even still get to the Leinster final. And of course, the thing with Galway is they're so unpredictable, and they have so many hurlers. They can turn it on in a flash for a one-off game. But definitely the signs over the last couple of weeks with Galway, even against Carlow at home. I mean, it took them a long time to beat Carlow. Now, Carlow are a good side as well and have decent hurlers, but you would be expecting Galway to have won it a bit more comfortably. And again, like I did say to a few people here, we were talking about the games the week before. Like for me, given the personnel who Kilkenny were missing, I think it was very, very important that Galway went and won that game. And they didn't, and albeit again for maybe an error is a bit harsh, but the goalie, Young Talis, trying to bring the ball down that time and the ball ended up in the net, they probably would have lost the game, which would have been a disaster given the result last Sunday on top of it, So I don't know, listen, super win for Wexford. Galway definitely must be kind of wondering where they go from here.
I think, Mark, and just on Galway, there didn't seem to be any structure there. I think as Seoirse said there, like, late on in the game, there was a Conor Foley got a point, and he was in 30 yards of space, and his own wing there, and there was nowhere anywhere near him. Like, it took his point at ease. I think as well with Conor Whelan, okay, they started him inside, like, but that's where he's most dangerous. We talk about Desiree Hutchinson in front of goal. That's where you have to play him. He wasn't getting. I think, look, Shane Wright did a phenomenal job on him, as he always does on these types of hurdles, but they brought him back out to field where, like, I think Shane was probably delighted to see this happen, like, because he followed them out and, the less threat out there. And I think for me, like, bringing Johnny Glynn on late on in the game and literally pumped high ball after high ball down on top of him, that's panic mode. That's Galway, not at this stage of the game, there was only 4 or 5 points in it. Like, they could have worked their way back into it, but bringing on Johnny Glynn, who's hasn't played inter-county hurling for 5 years, pumping long ball down the top of him, like, Wexford stepped back on it. I suppose they knew what was going to come when he came onto the field, but I think that was complete panic mode, and they were still in the game at that stage, and to me, it was still there for him, and just the structure, everything was wrong. I mentioned earlier the puck outs. They were just like a team who didn't know what they were doing. It was like a team that were put together the day before and set out to play a match. Which, looking at Galway, we consider them as being one of the traditional, probably counties where they're strong at hurling, but, like, have they regressed over the last 2 years? I probably think they have. They have a serious talent of, a pool of talent there. But, like, I don't know, is it management? At this stage, I don't think it is, because so many managers have gone in and failed. Is there a deeper possibly political issue there? I don't know, but, like, I don't think at this stage, like, Shefflin can be held accountable. Look, he will be held accountable, but I think there's deeper issues there than just the management and the backroom team and what's going on there. Like, they have every resource available. I've seen them with stats and cameramen. Like, they have, the backroom team is bursting with lads there that, so whatever is needed, they have it. So I don't know what the issue is. It seems to be deeper rooted issue in Galway hurling itself rather than just the management team and how they're laid out. Yeah,
no, I'd agree with you there, Kieran. I think there's been an awful lot of soul searching this weekend based up in Galway, alongside Castlegar GA club grounds, and one of my friends here basically mentioned the All-Ireland hurling semi-final last year against Limerick second half. He felt it was a replica of that performance where the game plan was sussed out by Limerick last year, same as Wexford, and there was nothing else to offer, and heads did seem to drop, particularly when Keane Byrne got sent off for the high challenge on Donal O'Shea. You thought maybe that was a bit of an impetus for Galway to kind of kick on. But look, the last 10 minutes, Wexford won 5 points to 2 and Rory O'Connor to the 4. There's an awful lot of soul searching here, but a fantastic win for Wexford. I suppose, guys, this weekend, 2 games on tap in Leinster. I think 2 fascinating ones. Dublin versus Antrim, and also the derby between Carlow and Kilkenny. Of in-laws down in Carlow, looking forward to Kilkenny coming down to watch Cullen Park. But I suppose, Seoirse, from your perspective, who are you tipping for these games?
Well, actually, look, the easy answer is to say Kilkenny will beat Carlow, and I think ultimately they will. But I've seen Carlow up close over the last couple of years, and Carlow have 3 or 4 hurlers out, genuinely would get on any county team in the country, and the likes of Mousy Kavanagh, consider back,
yeah.
It played half forward 2 years ago, and is hurling out his skin back center back again. Chris Nolan, like, phenomenal hurlers. They have some really, really good hurlers. So look, I think they'll give him a really good game, but I think Kilkenny ultimately will come through, and you'd probably be expecting Kilkenny to win that by 8, 10, maybe 11 points or so. The other game is very, very interesting. This year you'd probably say Dublin have blown more cold than hot right throughout the league and things like that. But for, I suppose, a freakish finish in injury time against Wexford, their year could be, you could say it was nearly almost done after the first round, but now all of a sudden grabbing that draw against Wexford, and then Wexford subsequently beating Galway's blown Leinster wide open. So again, I think there'll be a big lift in Antrim after beating Wexford, and I think Antrim will see it as a huge opportunity to weekend, and I think that could be awful tight. Again, I suppose if you had to spare fiver, you'd probably throw it on Dublin, but I wouldn't be surprised if it went the way of Antrim, but I just think Dublin might have enough to get through,
Yeah, Kieran, get you in there. I suppose you've seen Antrim up close person as well, being up in Cork and Park as well. You give them a good chance against Dublin?
Yeah, I do. And like, you look at the last 2 fixtures between the 2 teams, like the league this year where Dublin snatched a late goal. It was a keeper mistake to give him a goal. Like, all for that, Antrim would have won. And then, last year in the championship, Dublin got a late win up there as well, where Antrim, made all like and should have won. But I'm sure Derek Leeson will be using that, as motivation. Like we've let these guys have 2 easy wins the last 2 fixtures, and we need to get the one over on them. I think the home advantage will be a huge factor for Dublin. Parnell Park is probably a hard place to go and win, but don't underestimate Antrim. As Seoirse said earlier, they are a very good hurling team. There's some very, very good players. Starting at the black, Jared Walsh, Owen Campbell, centre back, really, really good player. Can play midfield as well. Up along them, James McNaughton, I look at the Wexford game, the damage he did, he made the run for the 2 goals. Niall McKenna, Colin Gunning, there's some very, very good hurlers here. And when they, that second half of the Wexford game, when they got a run on Wexford, Wexford couldn't stop the rot in any way. I suppose the one thing that you would say about Antrim in years gone by is they tend to have these games at home. And when they go on the road, they're potentially maybe not as good. And I think, that Wexford result will give them huge confidence going forward. It has to. Jeez, I wouldn't be surprised to see Antrim win. I do think Dublin will have enough, and I don't think there's going to be much in it. But I would not be surprised to see Antrim win it. That win against Wexford will give them huge confidence. I will say Dublin, but there won't be much between the 2 teams.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you there. I think for Antrim, performance is the mantra here. I mean, recall being down at Nolan Park, seeing him against Kilkenny first round and just giving up after 15-20 minutes. I don't see that happening this weekend, given the result against Wexford. And I think Dublin, it's really trying to build a bit of form going into these 2 difficult games coming up against Galway and Kilkenny as well. So, I mean, the stakes are pretty high here for Micheál O'Donoghue, Franny Ford. I mean, an awful lot of investment from those guys commuting to and from Galway to Dublin. And I think they persevered with the Dublin squad this year, with a few of them. And yeah, I'm just edging it to Dublin, but I think Antrim, that there hasn't been a hell of a lot in the difference between these 2 teams in recent years. I suppose Carlow Kilkenny, I'd be interested to hear Seoirse as well. Derek Ling, I mean, does he look to rotate maybe 1 or 2 from the squad into the team here, or do you think he'll just go all out, as Kilkenny typically do on Championship weekend?
They generally do. I would be surprised if you have a couple of maybe small little niggles or injuries, which you probably, the way the format is now, games coming thick and fast. I think he might rotate 1 or 2 maybe, but I can't see him rotating too many, because the likes of Kevin Mack, Chris Nolan, Mousy, these lads, if you take these guys for granted at home, you'll be under pressure. So I think they'll go fairly hard, because again, they'll want to get as many points on the board before they get to the latter stages maybe and try and get into that Leinster final. I suppose getting back to Parnell Park, while I do think Dublin will get over the line, I think there's big pressure like Kieran O'Sullivan, Danny Sutcliffe. You need a big performance in the forwards. Donald Burke, obviously, really, really good hurler. The Curries and that, if they get in, they'll need to score and score. I think they need to score heavy enough to beat Antrim. But I do think they will get over the line,
But just one thing on Antrim, Mark. I know you mentioned earlier about they look for performance. I think they're gone a little bit past that. I don't think they're happy with performances anymore. That's been probably the case the last year or 2, but Antrim 2 points on the board, and I think they'll be looking at it as, we win this weekend, we 4 points. We Carlow at home to play yet the last game. Potentially, if they win this game, they could be looking at a Leinster final, based on other results. But I think there's huge motivation in Antrim to try and win this game. And, I think the 4 points will probably, maybe not secure top 3 for them. But with Carlow to come in Cork and Park, they'll be fairly confident they get a result there. So I expect a huge game from Antrim this weekend.
I think the flip side of that as well is if they don't get another win, they'll know that if Carlow do turn them over in Cork and Park, they're going to be relegated to Joe McDonagh. So then, a bit like kind of Westmeath last year beating Wexford, while it's a great one-off result, and you're spot on, Kieran, they spoke a lot, even the last, I heard Darren Leeson and even Neil McMahon saying it, but Antrim have gone from the kind of the moral victories that they're pushing beyond that now. So, I think it's a double-edged thing for them. A win for them really puts them in a good position for at the very least a top 3 slot. And likewise, if they don't get the win against Dublin, it means that, look, the chances are, if they are turned over in Cork Park by Carlow, they could be relegated, which would be a shame, given the start they've had and winning against Wexford. So I think it's a very important game for both teams.
I suppose let's switch to Joe McDonagh Cup. Seoirse, we've been kind of focusing on this competition for 3 years that we've been on. We found this competition incredibly entertaining. And I suppose, can we get your thoughts in terms of Joe McDonagh Cup this year? I mean, the guys have a well-earned break this weekend before heading back into round 4. But I suppose what's kind of caught your eye in Joe McDonagh?
There's a couple things I would say about Joe McDonagh before I kind of get into the nuts and bolts of the games. Is for me, it's I'd always say the Premier Intermediate Championship in Limerick is probably the best championship you'll come across, because there's 8 teams in it, and any one of the 8 teams can either get to a final and go up or be relegated, given a kind of run of form. And the Joe McDonagh is a bit like that. It always throws up funny results, and if a team gets a run or two, gets a couple of wins, they can get to a final, or you could find yourself in trouble like Westmeath are at the moment, or you look at what Kerry have done so far. So it's a really, really competitive, competition. I don't know if there's too many maybe competitions in the GA or any sport where there's 6 teams starting out, and realistically any of the 6 could kind of go up or down, so it is a fantastic competition. But it's the disappointing thing for me, you haven't seen it firsthand the last couple of years, is big launch during the week at the Tailteann Cup. Hullabaloo made about that, no problem with that, but it just, there isn't the same level, I suppose, of promotion and exposure given to hurling outside of the Tier 1 competition. And for me, Joe Mac, all the way down along, they're phenomenal competitions. And I don't see why you can't have a launch for the Joe McDonagh when you can for the Tailteann Cup. That's the rant to offer regarding the lack of exposure. I think a couple of things so far in the competition, this was the surprise packets so far, has been maybe the performances of Westmeath, probably one of the early teams that did a decent league. Ran Tip relatively close. Ran Limerick was at the 4 or 5 points, or maybe 6 in the end in the league. You'd have been probably backing them to be definitely in the top 2 and get to the final. And now all of a sudden, it's if they lose the next day at home, to me the chances are they're staring down the barrel of relegation. So it's very, very interesting. I would have seen Laois at close up in the league back in March, towards the end of March, and after that game, I suppose my opinion changed a little bit. I would have said, yeah, for me, they definitely are the standout team for Joe McDonagh, and I think they were in my eyes, they were the favourites. Like Paddy Purcell, Picky Maher, all these lads, they're in the role and in goals. Willie Dunphy still there, Aaron Dunphy, they have some really, really top quality players, and they're showing that they're scoring heavy. Going to Tralee last Sunday, beating Kerry by 10 points is a big, big win down there. It's a very, very difficult place to play, and Kerry have had a very good start. They had 4 points on the board after beating Westmeath away, and then turning over down at home in Tralee as well. So for me, that was a big, big win and a big statement to their intent. They probably have one leg in the final now, so it's going to be very interesting. Obviously, you're looking at probably Offaly as the next favourites to get to the final against Laois. And you've Samson lads there, you've Adam Screeney, Charlie Mitchell. You've a lot of good hurlers coming through there. You've Brian Diden, and so at this stage you probably fancy to be a Laois Offaly final. Now again, Kerry still have to play Offaly, and that's probably the way results are going. It looks like it's going to be effectively semi-final at this stage to see who's going to win to the final against Laois. And Kerry have, after I suppose at the start of the Joe McDonagh to find out about Shane Conway, they have other guys that really stand up, the likes of Dan Goggins and that, and a couple of lads there from Limerick, Killian Hayes, David Wolf and that. You obviously Fionn Mackesy, really, really good hurlers. So it's very hard to call, who's going to win that game. But I suppose, as I said, Laois definitely have 1 foot in the final, and at this stage I think they're going to be very, very hard beat. I suppose that leaves a bit of an enigma with Westmeath, so they're in a funny position after a few games. Hard to know what's going to happen. As I said, look, themselves and Meath, the next is a huge game in Mullingar, with the loser probably would be under pressure for relegation. Down obviously would be very, very disappointed to have let slip the game the last day. Again, you're looking at Tipperary and Westmeath, but if you look at Tipperary and Waterford, down at that game 1, and Westmeath at a very late point. So I think we can't underestimate either Down. They'll still have a say in this, and the work that Ronan Sheehan has done up there on a tiny playing population of hurlers, and to be continually turning out big results. And it really is a fortress up there. I think, to the best of my knowledge, they're unbeaten so far in league and championship again up there this year. They've had some huge wins and some great hurlers. 2 McCrickards, Stephen Keaton goals, Owen Sands, fantastic hurlers. Tim Prent in the middle of the field, super guys. So they won't write off their chances of getting to the final either. But I suppose if I had to hang my hat, and I think it'll probably more than likely be a Laois Offaly final at this stage.
Yeah, Kieran, get you in there. I suppose what stood out for you last weekend in Joe McDonagh?
Yeah, and just to get onto that, like that Offaly Kerry game is next week, so I think that'll, as Seoirse said, that's effectively probably, I think as well, will be a semi-final. yeah, I think look, Laois have been, they have been impressive. They've been putting up big scores, and I think they're just probably playing like a Division 1 team. Really, they're just stronger, sharper, and they're used to the ball. I suppose when you have the likes of the Purcells and Dumfries and Mars and Thomas Keyser 1-1 the last day as well. I think they'll see themselves as Division 1 team, and I'd say a big hurt to Laois last year to be relegated. And I think it would be a fair scale to go back up on year one. I suppose it's not over yet. Effectively, they might have one leg in the final, but you still have to go and win it. I suppose last year, Carlow were a little bit of a surprise package in that Joe McDonagh final turned out to be a really impressive game, and I think Carlow took a lot of people by surprise getting the win there. So it's not all over yet, but I have been impressed with Down this year as well. So Rory mentioned it last week. They were 4-1 to win at home, and how close they were to it. The McCrickard, scoring 13 points, Tom McGrattan getting 3-2, huge score in a game. They are really hard to beat up there in Ballycran, and they have made I think they've made definitely big strides this year. They're close, but they're probably still a step away from the likes of the Laois and Offaly's, and Offaly, I suppose, while they put a big score on Meath, Charlie Mitchell, Screeney and Dan Burke scoring 3-11 between them, the 21 stars from last year, and they are, I suppose, improving, and I think they will fancy themselves against Kerry next week, and I think it all will be a Laois Offaly final as well, and I suppose you will have to make Laois favourites, but any final, you never know what can happen. But I think Offaly, will be hurt. Like, this is probably will be their second year in a row to get to a final, and if they do lose, they're making huge strides over the last couple of years, but they just need to make this one final jump, and it doesn't get any easier. The likes of Kerrys and Downs and whoever else is going to come down this year, it's tough. It's really hard to get out of. It's Seoirse earlier. It's like intermediate. It's very easy to slip back into it, but to try and get back out of it again is really tough. So it's really good competition, as Mark said. We've been promoting it over the last few years, and really, really good hurl. I look at that Joe McDonagh final last year. The quality of it, and it's really good competition. And I suppose, look, we all know the blight of the promotion of hurling at the minute. It's been talked enough in the media, but I just don't think this competition is getting enough praise and plaudits from the likes of Sunday Game. They show probably a minute clip. It needs more. I think we need to be very careful, because I suppose the game is slipping out of our hands at the minute, the way things are going.
I'd agree with you there, Kieran, completely. I think the media have to do a better job completely in terms of promoting our flagship, our Intercounty Hurling Championship, and that includes Joe McDonagh, Christy Ring, Laurie Marr, Nicky Rackard. There's intercounty players up and down the country here training hard to represent our county, so it shouldn't be just a kind of a tiny niche. And I suppose we can get to that probably in another podcast episode, but I suppose, Seoirse, just before you go, you had an association with Meath. It's been a bit of a baptism of fire in Joe McDonagh this season. I suppose, what players have stood out for you this year in Joe McDonagh for Meath this season?
I think, at the start here, we managed to find a couple of really good young guys, the likes of, Chris Gorman, Mark Horn, scoring again the weekend for the Kilmesson Club. Two shines, Tom and Dara, very, very good young lads. So you have kind of a core group of younger, good hurlers coming through. But again, I suppose the big difference I see in the various different levels is you mentioned there, Kieran, about Laois being a sort of a kind of a Division 1 team. The one difference is the day we played them in the league, you were literally physically, they were, supremely, they were athletes. If they were Division 1 athletes, so you were coming up against, for argument's sake, a couple of lads who might have, 3 or 4 months of proper S&C under their belt against lads who are probably at it for maybe 10, 12 years. So there's huge strides need to be made from the point of view of S&C with some of the counties trying to make the breakthrough, because physically, it's a tough ask now the way the game has gone. And the flip side of that is you take someone like Down, who would have very, very small numbers, and I think the thing that ultimately will catch Down maybe this year or any year is just strength and depth. Their first 15 guys will probably challenge and are capable of beating any team in the Joe McDonagh. But if you pick up an injury or two, or if lads are as happens in any game, 1 or 2 lads probably won't be going as well as you like. It's when you start slipping down to 18, 19, 20, you probably don't have the same caliber player to replace them that the likes of Laois and Offaly will have. So it's probably a numbers game, and then also from the point of view trying to improve guys maybe physically to kind of cope with the levels as you go up along. Look, I think the tiered system in hurling is fantastic. It makes for great competition. I suppose you take, Carlow up senior this year, up in Liam McCarthy this year. If they ultimately go down, what benefit will that do to them? I know you have to have promotion relegation. Should there be a year's grace given? I don't know. Like last year when Leader and Christy Ring, we felt it was hugely important to get out of Christy Ring at the first attempt, because if you didn't, you had a team. That's what happened last year. It was kind of Kildare ended up coming down. So then all of a sudden your chances of getting back up the next year are probably halved, which again will have a knock-on effect with the promotion of the game and developing young hurlers. Now, ultimately, if you're good enough, you'll come up, and if you're not, you won't. But like I said, if you want to try and really push, Carlow and Antrim to the next level and stuff like that, is dropping one of them back down or a Dublin for that matter, back down out of Liam McCarthy any good? If Wexford didn't manage to get a result last year against Kilkenny, what benefit to Wexford would it be playing in Joe McDonagh? Or certainly what benefit would it be to the rest of the teams that Joe McDonagh having to face Wexford this year? Now, ultimately, the answer is if they're good enough, they stay up. But again, I don't have the answers. I suppose I have more questions than answers. But you touched on it there, lads. I mean, it's a fantastic game, and we need to kind of mind it and coax it and cherish it and do what we can to promote it, and I suppose spread the gospel as much as we can, and just make it as, I suppose, competitive as we can.
Before Christmas, Seoirse, at the Wexford played Meath above in Bray Amateur in a challenge game.
Oh yeah.
To me, like what struck with the difference between the conditioning number one, but just the pace of things, how things are done. But like the hurling standard is still very good. That Joe McDonagh at Christy level, the hurling is unbelievable to watch. But I think it's just the conditioning and the pace of how things are done is the two differences.
The big thing is you get one chance at Liam McCarthy. If the ball doesn't stick, if you miss your touch, you won't get a second chance. You're gone. Whether it is inside your full back line or if it's a chance to score, you get one chance and that's it. And that's the huge thing. And like I said, you take whoever drops down to Christy Ring or whoever comes down for Liam McCarthy to Joe McDonagh, will they develop that sort of ability or that sort of what's required to develop if they're down a level again? Will they develop the pace? Will they develop the conditioning? Will they be as enticed to try and, I suppose, drive on to be as conditioned and get the most out of themselves if they're down a level? Again, look, I do understand that you have to have promotion and relegation, but you're hitting the nail on the head, Kieran. It's there's hurlers in the likes of Meath and Kildare that are, every bit as good as players in any other county. And again, it's that pace and maybe the level of club hurling that they're playing maybe for 6 months of the year, and they come back into an inter-county setup, and there's a big lift in that again, and there's a big gap between maybe club hurling in some of the counties to other counties, and you're trying to bridge that gap in a small window now.
Yeah, absolutely. No, great points, guys. Maybe we can have you on again, Seoirse, at the end of the season, maybe to talk about kind of how to revitalise the competitions and really kind of promote our national game here in hurling, which is the most beautiful sport in the world. I suppose, guys, we might leave it there. It's been a lengthy one tonight, but many thanks, Seoirse, for coming on. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and also Kieran as well tonight. Anyway, I suppose, guys, enjoy the weekend, and Kieran, we'll chat to you next week.
Thanks, Wayne. Thanks for having me. Sound out. Good luck.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Psychic podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Psychic on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.